A special interview today on the remarkable career of Reuel Marc Gerecht, a former CIA case officer who spent years focused on the Islamic Republic of Iran. He was an Iranian targets officer who even smuggled himself inside the country. What drove him to take that risk? What did he see and learn on the ground? And how does that experience shape the way he understands the Islamic Republic today? Reuel Marc Gerecht, thank you so much for joining us. You were a former Iranian targets officer for the CIA. First of all, what is a targets officer and what did that entail?
Well, I mean, the Directorate of Operations, also known as the Clandestine Service, it divides targets up by geography, by nationality. So when I came into the service, I wanted to continue to work on Iran. So that is just the terminology they use for someone who is working on Iran overseas.
But what are some of the duties and responsibilities of a targets officer specifically?
Well, I mean, what every clandestine service, every espionage service is doing is just trying to find individuals to recruit, to find agents, would be the correct terminology, who then report back to you. So my job was to find Iranians of interest and to see if they wanted to have a clandestine relationship with the agency.
And you said you wanted to do Iran, so it wasn't that you were necessarily assigned to it. This is something you were seeking.
Yeah, I had a pre-existing interest. I originally had done classical and medieval Islamic history.
Nice.
And so if you do that, at least back in the old days, you had to do the triptych. You had to do Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish. And of those three, I was easily most attracted to Iran.
Why, thank you.
So it was the giant magnet. So I had a pre-existing fondness for it. And back then in the agency, I think it's much more bureaucratized now. You could be a little bit more creative in suggesting your work assignments. So
you had more say.
You had possibilities, since the agency back then was essentially run by, mandarins. You had a few godfathers who made all the decisions. So if you could get a godfather to like you and suggest something, and if the godfather wanted to do it, then the bureaucracy more or less went along with it. So that's not the way the State Department works. It's a much more bureaucratic organization. So you might be an expert in Chinese and spend most of your life in Central America, or a lot of your life in Central America. So it's the agency back then was much more flexible. So I just simply suggested to them that I would be a good candidate for this, and I got them to agree to that.
That's great. And talk about time period. When was this going on?
1980s, 1990s.
Oh wow! So right after the revolution.
Yeah, no, I was in Istanbul, which is a great place to be because, as you probably know, maybe too young to know, that Istanbul.
I don't think so, but
Istanbul was Tehran-i Kuchik.
Yes, it's a little Persia. That's a good way to put it.
That's not true really anymore. All of the folks who had come there essentially to flee the war have overwhelmingly left, but in certain sections of Istanbul, they were overwhelmingly Iranian back then. And I would say that Persian was as common as Turkish, but it had certainly become a language, and there was its own sort of ecosystem.
And that's where you would start to make your connections and your networks, right?
Well, I had some there. I'd have them through the consulate. I was so yeah, it was not difficult to.
And why Iran? I know Mark Dupovitz in a podcast episode with you described you as having like an obsession or an infatuation with Iran. What was it about Iran that attracted you?
It's an excellent question. it's this giant weight. And the classical Islamic world is really composed of two parts. One part is that which absorbed the Byzantium, except for Anatolia. And then the other part, particularly when it goes from the Umayyad to the Abbasid, it shifts east. And so you have this massive infusion of the Iranian part. So medieval Islam is really about the incorporation of what had been what you could call, it's funny to use an Iranian term and a Greek one, it would be the Iranian oikumene, sort of the civilizational geography of what had been the Persian Empire. And so it gets absorbed. And so it is, it's quite powerful. And then the growth of, the very slow growth of the reassertion of a Persian identity inside of Islamic civilization is fascinating to watch. It's complicated. And I also just found Persian literature, Persian poetry to be more captivating.
Fascinating.
So all those component parts came together, and I had a very special professor, Martin Dixon, who was the only man I've ever met who was fluent in Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Japanese, and Chinese.
Impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. It's astonishing, actually. And he'd also been in American intelligence during World War II. So.
Did that influence you then going into intelligence, or is that something you were always
Well, it's
interested in?
funny because as it turns out, the two professors who were most important to me and shaping me and all the rest, one was Martin and the other one was Bernard Lewis, who'd been in MI6.
Both in intelligence, British American.
Yeah, so he had handled Turkey during the war, World War II. So I had something to do with it. I mean, I was briefed on the realities of what the agency would be like. The reality is not as you see it in the spy books. And I also had friends who had, I knew from college, who had also gone in. So I had a pretty clear idea of what Langley would be like.
So what is it actually like then?
Well, I mean, it's bureaucratic. I've written about this. I want to, at length, I probably don't want to give a quick summary here. It's just, it's not a well-run institution. There's a lot of problems with it, and it's built on probably a fib. And all espionage services are built on fibs. And that is, you really can't run a global service and expect to find that many people that are worth recruiting.
Interesting.
And who will commit, at least in their home country's eyes, treason. So and it's very hard for any intelligence service to rank people, to assess people without having some type of objective standards, unless it's a very small service, and obviously the agency isn't. So it's defective in the way it promotes people. To be crude about it, a little unfair. If you fib better, you'll do better.
If you fib better, you do better. That's
So again, this is not all that earth-shaking. All bureaucracies have great, difficulties. It's true with the U.S. military. It's true with all bureaucratic organizations.
It's everywhere, yeah.
Everywhere. So, but the agency had particular problems that over time annoyed me.
So then talk to us about that recruitment and Iran in your own experience, and anything that you can share with us. Obviously, it's not confidential. A particular case that stands out in your memory.
I mean, there are many cases. I'd have to be honest with you. I think the ones that stand out in my memory had had absolutely nothing to do with espionage.
Why is that?
It's the ones that I met individuals, and I'll never forget this man who, let's just say he had a past and a present that would make me interested in him. But I determined quite quickly that having a relationship for him wouldn't work. But he really wanted to go see his daughter, who was living in the United States. She was getting married. I was not 100% certain that he wouldn't stay in the United States. I didn't think he would, and according to the rules, if you believe someone is going to stay, you can't issue them a visa. Long story made short, I did issue them that visa. And then, I guess it was a couple months later, I get this call from the Marine post and the consulate, and it says, there's a huge bouquet of flowers down here for you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So I go down there, and there is a very long handwritten note from her daughter.
That's beautiful.
His daughter, thanking me. And I think I actually teared up, and I almost never cry.
Well, I can see it in your face now, even just talking
No,
about
it was, so there are little moments like that were pretty profound. That there were a lot of Iranians who were in trouble at that time. I mean, there always are Iranians in trouble with the regime, but I mean, at that time with the war and all the rest, it was pretty serious. Sometimes I could help them, and sometimes just talking to them, particularly the young men who'd been shattered by war, and I mean, truly shattered, both physically and mentally, was, how do you want to put it? I mean, it was a very profound experience, and it was also educational. Those are probably the best moments. Those are the most intimate moments. And I guess it's sort of, I got to play father confessor. So.
And speaking of educational, what did that teach you then as a case officer about Iranians, Iranian society, the regime?
Oh, it just taught me more about the contradictions. So.
And what a paradox Iran can be, right?
Yeah, and what individuals can be. It can be both lions and sheep almost at the same time. So it certainly taught me how profoundly integrated Shiism is in the Iranian character.
Like even with those who are not religious, is what you mean?
Yes, even with those who are not religious.
Talk to us about that. I'm interested to know more.
You could just see it. I mean, if you're aware of Shiite history, and
the notion of martyrdom and
I mean, martyrdom is certainly a factor. It's one of the most glaring factors. So is taqiyya, kitman. I mean, those factors, you certainly see them. Like I used to always joke that that lie detectors, I didn't really like using them on Iranians, because I found them to be, for the most part, useless. A lot of people.
They can lie that easily.
Oh, yeah. Not just lie, but just the straight line.
Oh, wow.
That was the most impressive part. But, you know, a lot of people disagreed with me, but I always found them to be pretty useless myself. But...
as someone of Iranian origin, I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, no, it's just very educational. It was a rare opportunity. I can't think of any other profession where I would have had the opportunity, possible exception being a psychiatrist, I suppose, where I would have that level of intimacy, and I could just spend days and days and days and days and days with people.
So what is it about Shiism then compared to Sunni Islam that's embedded in Iranian culture?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. It's a very, very long answer. I would just say Shiism is interesting, Sunnism is boring. So,
how so?
Well, I mean, orthodoxy, heterodoxy it just goes to Shiism. Shiism is this giant heterodox magnet. So if you're having rebellious feelings inside of Islam, if you want to experiment in some way.
So the rebels of Islam, in some ways.
Yes, intellectually and sometimes actually also on the battlefield. Also, I think Shiites have the stronger historical argument. I do believe that, in fact, early Islam, if you look at it, there's a profound notion of charisma by blood. So the original idea of legitimacy, Islamic legitimacy, of how one obtains salvation, I think the Shiites have the better historical argument. It's just they lost. They get revenge later, depending upon the period in medieval Islam. But Shiism is just more interesting. It's more complicated. There are more contours. There are more curves. So it's more factionalism.
And you see those characteristics inside Iranian people, whether they're religious or not. Yeah.
Sure. If you pay attention, you can see them right away. That doesn't mean, sometimes you could, I spoke to a lot of Iranian clerics at times, and, some of them were like talking to a block of wood. But, other times they were like my own little personal guide through history, even if they didn't know the history themselves, which was often the case. They had a sort of bad grasp of their own history. But nevertheless, if you paid attention, and they did you the honor, you could walk through time with them.
That's amazing.
So, anybody of a certain historical disposition, what you love most is time travel. That's what's great about Istanbul.
Takes you back in time.
You can go anywhere. It's just a constant walk through history.
And you also, I understand, you smuggled yourself inside Iran. How did that come about? Why? Tell me about that.
Well, as I have written about it, I don't want to go into too much detail of it now, but I had not, the agency didn't allow me to go inside of Iran. So, and I devoted much of my life to it. And so
So did they know? Were they aware that you smuggled yourself in?
No.
Or did you do this? Oh, wow.
No,
you went rogue.
Yeah, I went rogue. Yeah.
Wow.
I left. I went rogue. And so I just decided to do it. I knew I could do it.
But how? How did you do it?
I was just the Iranian border. It depends upon when you're talking about. It's porous and not porous. It depends when, and sometimes it's quite porous. It's just not. It's and depending upon where you cross.
Especially from Turkey and Iran, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And depending upon where you cross, it's nothing terribly, demanding. The issue is just not getting into trouble later. And I was fortunate to be able to do that for a fairly short period of time. I would not. I wouldn't recommend doing it when you get older and you get wiser. It's best to do these things when you're young and you have illusions. But
hey, it worked out. So.
Yeah, no, it worked out. It was as always, it was highly educational. So I got to feel, to some extent, I was always responsible for other people. And, you ask other people to do things that could put them into harm's way. I never really asked myself. So, to some minor extent, I got to feel that same sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, challenge.
But how did you physically cross into the border? Like, how did you do that?
In a truck.
But you just got into the back of a truck? You're like 6'6" or something?
No, I was behind it. It's trucks. Semi-trucks have like, a lot of them have beds in the back, and under the beds are.
So you just lied down.
They're actually storage areas.
Oh, you went in there. Oh, that's so wow.
Yeah. So.
And you said it was educational. What did you learn, or who did you come across? Was it government officials? I know, but I want to hear it.
I wrote a book about it.
I recommend it, but.
Yeah, Know Thine Enemy. Somebody, so I think you can still get it.
Yes, you can. I checked on Amazon.
Okay, I think you can still get it. But no, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about other Iranians. You certainly learn about the Iranians who are responsible for you.
And this
again,
was in the 90s, right? Again,
yeah,
still we're in
yeah.
the 90s. Okay.
Again, I don't. There are other ways to be educated, and as you get older, it's better to do those ways. But you know, it was something I needed to do at that time.
And speaking of Iran, Iranian media has accused you, some state media, of being, and I quote, the mastermind of the assassination of Soleimani.
That's just silly. Yeah. Yeah, I got. They were very naughty. Actually, I do remember, and I grew to appreciate Interpol more than I did before, because they actually were trying to get a red notice on me at one time, a long time ago. Well, because they were going out in these conspiracy delusions, and Interpol actually told them that if they didn't stop this nonsense, they were going to like boot them from Interpol. So my opinion of Interpol went way up about that. They actually stood up for principle. But no, I mean, I stopped reading the Iranian press on me. You know, sometimes it can be entertaining. Sometimes they actually have read what you've written. They may have analyzed it wrong. I get that ever so often, that it's an interesting textual critique that you can make of what
misinterpretation of
what they see and how they see it. It's that and it's probably most striking when you see that, and actually it's not crippled by conspiracy. So if it's not crippled by that, you know, and as we all know that Totier Jouy is rather profound at times, that's when it becomes more interesting, is when you actually get someone who's read what you've written and they're actually sort of trying to thoughtfully take it apart.
Seeing it through their lens gives you window into what they're thinking too,
but
right?
often most of the time it's just sort of, you know, off the chart conspiracy that has no relevance whatsoever, and certainly the issue of that is just silly. I think the person who's probably most shocked that Qasem Soleimani got hit was John Bolton, because, you know, he recommended it at least once, but twice maybe. I've lost track of how many times John actually recommended it, and, you know, Trump said, "No way, no way."
Yeah.
You know,
I've talked to Ambassador Bolton about that.
Actually. Oh yeah,
he said he was very shocked.
And then he leaves, and wow.
And then he said that actually. He's like, and then I left. And then
so yeah, but I certainly had nothing to do with it. I mean, I think it's fair to say that I did not view Qasem Soleimani as a beneficial agent in the Middle East. I think that's fair to say. I was certainly critical of him.
Let's talk about current events. One thing about the 12-day war between Iran and Israel is it really exposed just how infiltrated Iran is. We even saw that before the 12-day war, in fact, with the assassination of Khamenei inside, you know, while he was sleeping in bed at the IRGC building. So what has that taught you in terms of just how infiltrated Iran is? And we're hearing reports now that people are not getting along inside the regime, that they're turning against each other because they're all suspicious of one another. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, it's hard to assess intelligence penetration from a distance. And it can look more profound than you think it is, or that it really is, I should say. So if I were to add up the number of penetrations the Israelis probably needed to have to do what they did, the number wouldn't be that large.
Oh, so that's all it takes.
And it takes fewer than you think. So, and most of those penetrations look to be what I would call covert action penetrations. And I don't want to get into the weeds of the difference between covert action penetrations and human intelligence penetrations, but there are substantial differences. The human intelligence is much more hard. It's difficult to pull off and sustain. Covert action, because it requires someone who has less accomplished in the system
Hmm.
and can be regionally picked up. It's a just different category. It's still impressive they pulled it off, but it's less impressive than if, say, they had recruited Khamenei's doctor. All right.
And I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that would be very impressive. So the Israelis were obviously patient, and certainly military intelligence probably gets most of the credit, not Mossad, was very patient in how they approach these things. I think you have to give the Israelis credit also, is there was a period, particularly in the 1990s, even early 2000s, that the Israelis didn't look that impressive on the ground. They were making a lot of mistakes. But in retrospect, it certainly appears that they just absorbed those mistakes and they just kept going. Now, that's what you need to do. It's very difficult for democratic societies to do that, for bureaucracies in democratic societies to do that. You make certain mistakes, certain cock-ups, and it tends to freeze operations. That didn't happen. So I'm just impressed that the Israelis kept going. I don't know how many penetrations they actually had, but the thing is that given Iran's sort of conspiracy addiction,
it's embedded in the culture, yes.
It doesn't take many conspiracies to sort of multiply into numerous. And maybe the Israelis have pulled off, more recruitments than I think they have. The effect that has internally on purges, on questions about fraternal loyalty, all those things, is profound. So it's very, very corrosive. So I'm not surprised at all that this appears to have, produced many purges. Actually, they're not many anymore. So that's I would have expected that. How long it lasts, I don't know.
That's a good question.
It's a good question. I have no answer. I have no answer for that.
So for the scale and magnitude of what Israel achieved inside Iran in terms of the targeted assassinations, when you're saying it didn't require too much infiltration, like what are you
not too much. It can be focused. You don't have to necessarily have
could it be just one person?
A shotgun blast. No, it's certainly more than one person.
It's a network.
Yeah, that's absolutely clear. I have a lot of questions for the Israelis which they haven't answered. So I would be very curious to know, how they recruited their principal assets and their various projects, and did the principal assets recruit for them? How it worked. What was mechanically, there are a lot of interesting questions about this, and I'm sure the Israelis won't tell me.
How would you have approached it? I'm just curious.
I don't know. That's an excellent question. It would require a very long answer. I would say you'd have to approach it patiently, and you'd have to experiment. And that's one of my questions: is how much did they experiment? Because you'd have to do dry runs. These type of things, little mistakes can just foul you up. They can, get people killed.
Yeah. So
it's impressive that they pulled it off, and it appears. We don't know for sure because we're not in Iran and you can't see everything. It appears that they pulled it off without significant earlier mistakes. Again, you don't know that for sure, because maybe there were mistakes. Maybe the Iranians didn't realize what they were dealing with. Maybe the mistakes actually, they lucked out. They didn't produce reverberations that could have taken down operations. I don't know. So I have more questions, but certainly I would have approached it very patiently. It's hard for me to imagine that the agency would ever approve of such an operation over an extended period of time. I think they would have concluded the risk would have been too great. But the Israelis just have a different perspective, since
it's a threat to them, right?
Right.
It's
an existential threat to them, and the Islamic Republic is certainly not an existential threat to the United States.
You mentioned purges and conspiracy theories. As an analyst, how do you see the Iranian government post-12-day war as fractured? How would you describe it?
That's an excellent question. Ray and I have a coming piece out on the Wall Street Journal soon, just on that very issue. I think it has spiritually and perhaps bureaucratically dealt a death blow to the supreme leader. I'm very doubtful that the 86-year-old gentleman is actually running the government now.
So we're in a post-Khamenei era already.
Effectively, I think we are.
Interesting.
So they're going to have to sort it out. It was a true shock to the system. Now, the Islamic Republic has had many shocks, and they have so far recovered from them. So I wouldn't describe this shock of what's happened since, October 7th 2023 as being terminal to them. But it has convulsed the ruling elite. And again, I have more questions than I have answers, but I find it entertaining that, that Ali Larijani is once again the secretary for the Supreme National Security Council. He had been cast out for a while. He's a very talented, sinister individual. I deeply admire him. He's good.
He's clever.
He's good. He's clever. I don't think he's as clever as he thinks he is. But the regime has, over the years, Khamenei has been shrinking the inner circle unwisely. But he has been effective, I think, in replicating himself inside the system. So even if he fades further and is effectively no longer running the government, his clones are. So I don't anticipate that much change. Could be wrong. But right now, I would say he has successfully created his succession.
And who do you see?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't even dare to speculate. I used to always laugh when I'd ever read. The agency always puts out these on any given crisis, succession crisis. You see all these things, and they, 95-7% of the time they're wrong, or they're just not useful. Even when they're right, it's obvious, and when these things only matter if you can give you the unexpected. I don't know. You obviously don't have what you had the first time around. There is no Rafsanjani. So I don't know. It could be quite interesting, or they could just fall back on the institutions they have. That's also possible. I think that shouldn't be discounted. So the assembly of experts might actually matter. I don't know, but I'd be shocked if whatever comes out the other end isn't, for the most part, what we've already seen.
So does that mean that the Islamic Republic can make a full recovery, or just a recovery and kind of a new form?
It can't make a full recovery, and they know that. So they know how much they've lost. They're well aware of how many people in the country dislike them intensely. They're well aware of how their base of support has shrunk. But, as long as they have X number of young men who are willing to commit violence, to maintain the system, then they win. And so far, they've been able to have X number of young men commit violence.
Yeah.
So women can't bring the Islamic Republic down. It has to be young men who do that. So unless they surprise you, I mean, it's possible that you could wake up one day and discover that people who have appeared to be ardent revolutionaries have decided to have been fibbing to themselves. I don't think that's likely, but it's possible. You can't discount that in an autocracy. It's like I remember once I was in Moscow. I was actually going to Afghanistan, and I was in Moscow, and I happened to go to a crazy party with a bunch of friends who were mostly ex-KGB, current KGB, or foreign ministry. And
that does sound like a crazy party, just
no,
based
it
on
was.
who you described.
I mean, Russian parties are nuts. And I was at the party, and we were all in the kitchen, and everybody was drinking heavily, as Russians usually are. And I asked, there were probably about more than a half dozen officers at the table, and their wives were in there, not all the wives, and they were in there. And I just asked one of them, I said, so what disturbed you? I said, what disturbed you most about the Soviet period? And this was, Putin hadn't come into his glory yet at this time. This was right before 9/11. And they all said the same thing. They said they got tired of lying to their children. So mutatis mutandis, it's possible to imagine a situation in Iran where you have loyal foot soldiers of the regime, as all those gentlemen were around that kitchen table. They were all did very unpleasant things at work for the betterment of the Soviet Union, who actually know they're lying to themselves and are upset with themselves about what they do. So it is conceivable you could encounter that type of situation inside of the Islamic Republic. I don't think so, but it's possible. And if that type of scenario is possible, then you could have conceivably real change in the Islamic Republic in Iran if the right sequence could develop after the death of the supreme leader.
So, but are the conditions there then? It doesn't seem like. Are the conditions there for change? People keep talking about regime change.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the regime has the advantage, and as I said, will replicate itself. You just haven't seen, with the exception of the Green Movement, 2009, you just haven't seen the type of street demonstrations that are really terrifying. You get a bit of that in the ethnic areas of Iran, but you haven't seen it where it really only matters, and that's with the Persians and the Azeris. So until you see it with them, then the regime, you know, it can thump all day on the Arabs and the Baluch. Who cares? Kurds too. So it's only if those two communities, which are the backbone, the superstructure of the country, and also of the Islamic Republic, if they started to vibrate, crack. And as of yet, I don't see it, but it could happen. And I think you always have to keep that in the back of your mind, that the regime is fundamentally unstable. And it knows it's fundamentally unstable. The problem is it knows that. So, you know, it's thoughtful.
Yeah, it's self-aware. If it's self-aware, they can work on it, right?
It's self-aware. It's not delusional.
So are we delusional then?
Well, no, because the unexpected could happen. So, and the regime is fairly open about that. I mean, it's the unexpected thing that really scares them. It's not what they can see, it's what they can't see. So you could have an event or a sequence of events that could overload the system. We just haven't seen it yet. I don't think there's going to be a peaceful transition. I know there are a lot of Iranian expatriates who keep, hoping, crossing their fingers, they could get like some type of peaceful transition in the country. I suspect that's not true. I don't think individuals who have, you know, tortured and killed the number of people that they have, it's not a huge number, but it's enough, who have shown they're willing to do fairly hideous things by Iranian standards. I mean, they're not impressive by Maoist standards, but they're by Iranian standards, they're fairly impressive. That I don't think these people aren't going down easily. I mean, they are not moving to Paris. So I think they're gonna go down swinging. So I don't anticipate. And the Iranians will have to do it on their own because there's going to be no substantial outside support.
So I was going to ask you next what you make of Trump and his Iran policy. I mean, I've talked to a lot of experts who say he doesn't really have one.
He doesn't, as far as I could tell. So, and he certainly doesn't have a regime change strategy.
No, and he said it.
Right, and the bureaucracies always are opposed to that. So you won't expect the bureaucracies. I mean, Trump doesn't pay any attention to the bureaucracies anyway, but the bureaucracies will always go the other way. They don't want anything to do with regime change, which is why some of the Iranian commentary on this is always so funny, because it's literally 180 degrees from the truth.
And my final question, I'm going back to that KGB party that you described.
Yeah.
As a case officer for the CIA, what was the one thing that disturbed you about the Islamic Republic that you learned that maybe we wouldn't know about?
I don't think there's anything that you wouldn't know about. I mean, you know how violent they can be. They can be downright wicked.
Was there something you witnessed that stuck with you all these years?
There are there are just a couple times that they displayed their wickedness in a rather thorough fashion. They're really not nice. But it can be you can also get the opposite of that. I mean, I was in Afghanistan one time, and there were Iranian intel officers who had come in, and they were intel. I don't think they were guard intel. They were actually intel. It seemed too polished for guard intel. And I asked if I could see them just to chat with them, and I did. And they were a lot of fun. In fact, I'll never forget. I mean, it was like I asked them. I remember one of them asking me. He says, "Do you like Afghanistan?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I like it a lot. It's stunningly beautiful." And his response was, "I hate this place."
Why?
Well, he was a Tehrani boy.
Of course. Well, there you go. Not enough of a city for him.
It just sucked. So so you got to always. Now, could that gentleman? I always say this in my mind. Always.
To be flipped?
Yeah, I mean, could that gentleman have engaged in real wickedness? And the answer is, maybe. I think yes, maybe. Yeah. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with people, and that's always part of the fascination and charm, is whether the individuals that you have a very good time with or seem pleasant and sociable and funny also might not be, depending upon the circumstances. So those are big questions, and if you could answer those questions, then you'd know the future of the Islamic Republic.
But could those types of people be flipped then?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Did you encounter anyone where, without giving any names, that you were able to switch them?
Yeah, of course. But, I don't know what they were really before. So, I mean, did I have long discussions with people who had believed ardently in the Islamic Republic with every fiber of their body, and then they went into the Iran-Iraq war, and they were physically and mentally blown apart, and had a transformation? Yes. But I mean, that's passion being destroyed by defeat. That's very common. I mean, I always remember in Islamic history, I mean, my favorite dynasty is the Safavids. And, you know.
And you love Esfahan.
I do. That, you know, when the Kizilbash, you know, stormed towards Selim the Grim's Ottoman forces and stormed towards the artillery, you know, they were the most impressive cavalry force in the Middle East at that time. And then the Ottoman artillery got to them. And then they lost the Battle of Chaldiran. And then you can actually see in the Persian and Turkish source material, the folks going, you know, maybe I won't be so hulot. Maybe I'll just be a little less. You know, so you start seeing the degradation of that passion through military feat. Now that's just a historical rule. So the Islamic Republic had its own version of that, obviously, with the Iran-Iraq War. And it's had a slow motion version of that just through the deterioration of the promise that the Islamic Revolution had for so many people. So, but again, you get back to the question, that promise can deteriorate for an overwhelming number of people, not overwhelming, for a large number of people, but it still doesn't overwhelm the system. So, I don't know. I mean, but I can say for certain that the United States under Trump or any successor isn't going to get involved in regime change. It would require, I suppose I could dream up a scenario where that might change, but highly unlikely.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
My pleasure.
I'm so happy we finally got to meet in person.
My pleasure.